Hello and welcome to the Dad and Buried podcast. My name is Mike, aka Dad and Buried. I'm sure you've heard of me. This is my co-host Pete. Pete doesn't believe in social media.
Perhaps you've heard of me, the great social media prognosticator of 2007, when I said it was a total disaster. And guess what? Guess who's right, Mike? Which one of us is right?
We're both right. I didn't even make a stand. I just use it. I didn't say that I don't think it's horrible.
Okay.
So, do you think if we didn't know each other personally and you didn't have social media, you would know who I was? In other words, do you think I'm famous?
Oh my God. That's going on Cringetopia for sure.
Cringetopia? Did you just make that up?
No, that's a thing.
That Cringetopia joke is the Mount Rushmore. If you go to cringetopia.com, it is that joke you just made. The name of this thing
just
was
me
coined
just
by
making
Pete
fun of the
Anderson.
fact that you said, "Do you think I'm famous?"
Just you using the term Cringetopia.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Anyway, we are back for another edition of the Dad and Buried podcast. Pete is back. He's been away for a couple of weeks in a row for various reasons. Mama Buried filled in admirably, I must say. People are clamoring for more Mama Buried.
Honestly, just like Mama Buried, take it down a couple notches. You know what I'm saying?
To put things in perspective, people are clamoring for more Mama Buried, and they're also clamoring for more of my beanie, which is why it is back. Loyal listeners will know that I wore the beanie all last winter, and guess what? Mid-October, it's beanie season, even though it approached 75 here today, and it's going to be warm again tomorrow.
Almost 80 degrees.
So I posted something about a beanie, and then somebody said, "You're wearing it wrong. You need to have no tuft." And I'm like, I'm keeping the tuft. I put up a poll, and then I did a picture of myself with the tuft and without the tuft, and people were like, "Go back to the tuft." And no one even really likes the tuft, but without a tuft, they're like, "You look like an inmate."
It's so much worse. Look, here's the deal. You're giving people two horrible choices and choosing the lesser evil.
Somebody said the youth ship has sailed. Get rid of the beanie. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that was really harsh.
No, actually, you know what? Was that your mom?
It was my mom. It was my mom. Yeah, she's having a tough time during the
pandemic. Is she, or maybe she's just throwing truth bombs?
Well, she's in Connecticut, and they've just Governor Cuomo was like, "Don't go to Connecticut because you ain't coming back without a." Did you hear that? Connecticut, I think in New Jersey and Massachusetts maybe were put on like the watch lists.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, New York doesn't have, isn't smelling like roses either.
No, I know.
I'm talking to you, Sheepshead Bay.
And Borough Park.
Yeah, Midwood.
And a variety of other places. Did you hear
first of all, where is Midwood? Does anybody really know?
There's an amazing pizza place in Midwood. Anyway. Did you hear that the city shut down, or the state shut down a wedding that was going to have 10,000 guests?
Okay. You know what? I am so glad you brought this up. There are so many things to this. So first of all, someone was going to have some couple, I would imagine, right? This isn't the Reverend Sun Young Moon marrying 10,000 couples. This is a wedding with 10,000 guests.
But
think of the invitations. Think of the fighting.
That happened. This was, I believe, is the Hasidic Jewish community, and it was like the son of, or it was either a prominent rabbi, or like somebody in his family was getting married.
Are you sure it wasn't one of the Kardashians who was getting married to the?
One of the Kardashians has become a rabbi.
Okay.
Marrying another Kardashian. It was just the perfect storm, you know?
Yeah. Two Kardashians were marrying each other.
Exactly. I mean, look, that's eventually where it's going to go if you want the ratings, right?
Listen, there's no better place to get married than Sheepshead Bay.
I go to the movie theater in Sheepshead Bay consistently. The last movie I saw before the pandemic, before the quarantine in March, was Pixar's Up at the Sheepshead Bay movie theater, because we have a car and you can reserve tickets, because otherwise you got to go and you got to go to Court Street.
Was this 2010?
It was. You got to go. Otherwise, you got to go to Court Street and fight for seats. They don't have reserved tickets.
Wait a second. Did you have a flux capacitor? Were you going 88 miles an hour and you went back to 2010? That was the last time you went to a movie theater?
Mike, the great Mike. Go? 2010? No, I went in March, the day before the outbreak started. Essentially, the last thing I was doing was I was at a movie theater with my kids
to see a real.
Anyway, it was in Sheepshead Bay. I went there a lot before the pandemic. Shouts to that theater. It's not bad.
Yeah, but also shout down to all the corona that's happening
well,
right
look,
there.
movie theaters might not be coming back, buddy, which is a shame. So, gonna have to watch our movies on
You
streaming.
know what? You know what you can do? You can fill an entire movie theater with part of that, with just 1/10 of that 10,000 person wedding. What an
That's
obnoxious,
true. Not even close.
what a ridiculous number of people to have to a wedding.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Fuck that wedding. I mean, really, fuck that wedding.
Well, that would be that'd be a hell of a honeymoon if you're gonna fuck that wedding. Anyway, so we're back from, or Pete's back from vacation and from personal matters and from the brink of despair, I think.
Yeah.
Did you have seasonal affective disorder or whatever, where people get depressed because it turns into winter?
Opposite.
You get psyched.
Yeah, I'm just honestly, there's a lot of chest pumping. There's a lot of like Matthew McConaughey speeches that are happening in my household. Yeah.
Like where he's just like, imagine she was white, like that kind of speech.
Wait, what?
That's a Time to Kill, his breakout role, where he became a superstar. Imagine she was white. You don't read John Grisham?
Honestly,
I'm glad to have you back, Pete. This week we're going to be talking about kind of the stuff you try to shield your kids from. One of our jobs as parents is to protect our children, and in some ways that requires keeping the real world and adult concerns and 10,000 person weddings away from them if you can. And so I asked listeners and my Instagram followers what topics and stuff do they try to protect their kids from. And we got some good answers, Pete. We got some good answers.
The problem is though, Mike, you let your kids watch The Real World seasons 1 through 7, which is really where it was some of the best TV that's ever been recorded.
Well, this is the thing. I go, kids, that's Puck.
Yeah.
Don't be like Puck, right?
Yeah.
That's all. It's honestly a great lesson. Show kids Puck. Be like, don't be like that, and you'll probably end up being a decent person.
When was the last time The Real World was on TV?
I don't know, like last year. It has never stopped. Yes, it has never stopped. They're on like season 40.
Oh my God.
It has never stopped. It changed around like season 5 or something. It became like young people partying at whatever location they're in. Yeah. Whereas like the first season was sort of like an actual documentary kind of thing. It was interesting. I can't believe we're talking about this. But we are going to be talking about some real life stuff today because we're not. This is what happens when podcasts stop being polite, Pete, and start being real. Nailed it. That's like the tagline for The Real World. You don't even know?
I do know, and I got it. I just wanted you to have a moment. I wanted you to self high five, and then I wanted you to leave complete silence and just see what you came back with.
Well, I guess. You know what? You need more entries for your Cringetopia website. So there's a couple.
Yeah.
Right,
you know what?
We'll be back right after this to talk about the stuff you try to shield your kids from, right? Like words like Cringetopia. Don't let them get a hold of that. Horrible. All right, we're back with the Dad and Barry podcast. Like I said, tonight we're going to be talking about the kind of adult / real world, the topics and stuff you try to shield your kids from if you can. But before we get into that, we want to remind everybody that you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can throw us a rating on Apple. We would love that. Haven't gotten one in a while. Could use some new ratings, people. Come on, get out there. And you can subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can throw us a little bit of money if you want via Patreon or Anchor. So we have Ryan Miller and MS Babine use Anchor, so that works. Molly Robertson, Check Your Kids at the Door. Chris Coleman, M. Cedeno, Mallory McKenzie, Miriam, and Tina Davis use Patreon, along with Rob Gilberry, Lindsay Woodruff, Andrea Sandoval, Barbara Geiger, Bill D'Amica, Dana Bosday, who left a comment on YouTube.
We got some good time comments coming.
You can leave comments on individual episodes if you watch us on YouTube. We also got Jacques Govar, Morning Glow, Cotton Farmer AZ, Wes Clark, Jennifer Wynn, Julie McCarthy, Paula Opalski, Mary Williams, and Julie Burton, whose Chiefs snuck out a win against the Bills. I believe that was yesterday. One of the things that's nice about COVID is extra football, some random games, some random
times. Did they sneak it out, or did they? I think they.
No, they won pretty handily, but it just wasn't a great game on either end. Like it was just rainy, so nobody was doing all that much. I do want to apologize to Julie because Pat Mahomes, her beloved quarterback, his reign is basically ending. The Dolphins announced today that Tua Tagovailoa, God damn it, I don't even know how to say his name, but I'm gonna learn because it's Tua time. He's starting for the Dolphins after the bye. We're gonna got a new young quarterback in town, my man.
Oh, do you?
What I'm talking about?
Nope, not at all. But I did happen to catch the Jets Dolphins game.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. I don't take melatonin to go to sleep very easily, but about 4.5 minutes of just watching the Jets Dolphins is all you need.
Excuse me, they put the Jets to sleep is what they did. 24-0 should have been 42-0, but that's why it's Tua time. It's got a higher ceiling. We're gonna see what happens. Anyway,
I think the Jets' number one plan is just try and get COVID.
Oh,
just try and get COVID for the season.
No. They want to lose. They want to go 0-16 to get a new draft pick, which is why they haven't fired their abominable coach and why they probably don't want to get COVID, because if this stuff gets delayed, all stuff is going to be weird. They just want to go 0-16 and get a draft pick so they can ruin that guy too, because that's what the Jets do. No offense to everybody who's a Jets fan, except triple the offense, because I hate the Jets and I hate Jets fans.
I'm seriously wondering why New York has two football teams.
You know what? I'm not going to debate you. They should combine them. They're both terrible. Anyway, you can listen to us in all those places. You can subscribe. You can leave ratings. You can throw us some cash. We appreciate it every which way. Any way you want to spend time with us. You know what? It's an honor to be able to do this for you people. And you know what? It's an honor to be here with you, Pete.
Oh my God. The honor, honestly, is all on this side of the microphone or camera. By the way, we're getting a new view of the Dad and Buried domicile.
This is my bedroom. Are the open windows distracting? Are the open drapes?
No. I'm too busy trying to open your underwear drawer with my eyes, so it's working.
Well, you know what? Just come over and you can use your hands.
Hey, Mike, turn around.
Oh my God, I don't even. That's creeped me out because it's Spooktober, as we do in the Berry. I don't know if we spoke to you since Spooktober began. Been watching a lot of scary movies lately, which is one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Whether it's one of the things that gave me the idea was my wife is watching Stranger Things with my 10-year-old, and she didn't want my toddler in there because it can be a little bit spooky for him. But eventually she just let him stay in there.
But you've already watched it, or why are you not part of the mix of the?
We've already watched it. I was cooking one night when they were doing it, or I had some work to do or something like that. So sometimes they like to have a little mommy kid time.
Oh,
and
okay.
At one point I was in here with the littlest kid trying to distract him, but he just ended up wanting that. But I'm wondering, so I asked, because one of the things is, like, I know a lot of people won't show their kids scary stuff, and then there are some people that are much worse than me, show them really, really scary things. I don't know about you. We
have a very low tolerance for scary things in our household in general, mainly because of the lack of sleep that it produces.
Yeah.
And the nightmares that it induces, even things that are really not scary at all.
That was the primary complaint. Then a bunch of people were like, I try to keep my kids from scary movies because they have nightmares and they wake up, and I don't want them to wake me up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I can listen, Saw 5, look, if a person's crawling around in a pit of needles, hey, guess what? It happens sometimes, kids. So get used to it. It's called New York City, okay?
Well,
it's happening in real life. So
good thing they're not wearing flip-flops like me. I'm going to take all the needles in my feet for your kids. It's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. But it's funny that you should mention it, because most of the stuff that came up was less about the media they're seeing, although there's definitely some of that, but it's mostly like real world stuff. And I know that you've been dealing with some real world stuff recently yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, my father-in-law, my wife's dad, passed away rather suddenly. So that was, very hard. It's been hard the last couple of weeks. That's why I've been
Yeah.
out.
So you have,
But we were trying. Death is death. It
yeah.
was our first death as a family.
And it's
Uh,
interesting though, because you have a 12-year-old kid
yep,
who's like at the
12,
point
10,
where like
and
shielding
6.
stuff is really less of a thing. A
Right.
10-year-old kid who's on the cusp, and then the 5-year-old or the 6 now.
Well, the 6-year-old who just everything is shielded. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
like, hey, what are you eating? Just shut up. Just
yeah.
shut
Yeah,
up and go
exactly.
back in your
You don't need to
cage.
know.
You don't need to know
You don't
that.
want to know.
That looks delicious. It's not. It's just a delicious hamburger. I mean, it's
Spicy.
not delicious.
No, it's too spicy for you.
Yeah, it's too spicy. But no, it is yeah, so this is the first death. It was obviously extremely sad and very surprising as it wasn't foreseen that
Right.
my father-in-law was not sick, or at least so we thought. It was just went into the ER one day, and then a number of things happened and just wasn't
Yeah, and
just.
it obviously, and just to clarify, it wasn't COVID or anything like
It
that,
was
right?
not COVID. It was not COVID related. It had, I mean, he was older, so he was in his 80, or he was almost 80. And it just, yes, a series of things that we ended up, some things we found out about, and just didn't stuff, your body gets old, and we didn't realize what was going on, and he had
Well,
to actually have surgery and didn't end up coming out of the surgery, which was a shame.
yeah, that's horrible. Mama Barry and I were very sad to hear the news, and condolences to your wife and your family. It's sad, but like I wonder, had you broached the topic of like death with your kids before, or is that something you shielded them from?
Well, I have actually. We have broached the topic of death. A lot of the times it comes around brushing teeth, and if
Yeah,
you
I'm
don't
gonna
brush your
kill
teeth,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
But not a real
Daddy,
life
what's
death.
that mean?
Yeah,
Well, son, it means you'll go to hell for not
yeah.
listening to your dad.
But not real life death. So real life death was it's strange, and I even obviously I don't have a ton of experience with it. A few my grandparents have all passed on.
But
Yeah, exactly. Exactly what my parents said. But no, so this was interesting to be able to talk about it. My 12-year-old is really in tune. I think also just grief was really
yeah,
interesting, like how grief, kind of worked with the different kids. It was really sweet. Actually, in some cases, it was really quite.
well, I imagine you have to learn some stuff about your kids that you might not necessarily know because they don't have that experience that often, and you don't have the experience of, you know, them experiencing it that often, right? So you find out some things that maybe are new.
Right, and I will say that in terms of, so as a grandparent wasn't exactly the closest, so it wasn't like every day, or this wasn't necessarily the closest relationship from a grandparent to the grandkids, and even just in general, like we're in a different part of the states. Um, but nevertheless, it was still obviously a shock, and I
Yeah.
think the way that uh, we were pretty upfront about it, actually, for the most part. Once, I think I just need to give obviously my wife enough time to,
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, she's dealing with it
took some
herself.
time to deal with it, and then letting the kids know was we were pretty upfront. But it's not like we were shielding them. Yeah, so in many respects we weren't shielding them from it.
It
We
just
were
hadn't.
shielding them from the concern that we had that he was in the hospital, because so he was in
Uh-huh.
the hospital for about a week, and then had surgery, and then just unfortunately didn't make it, and which is obviously devastating. But it was, but then at that point it was, this has happened. Pop
Yeah,
Pop
right.
has died. He's moved on, and and hear all the good things about it, and here's the sad things about it, and it's okay to be sad, and blah blah blah. So it actually it was pretty cathartic in
And
general. And
it allows you to maybe bring up some stuff that hopefully you don't have that much opportunity to bring up, but like talk about those things, in a real way and that kind of thing, so that they are exposed to them. Maybe you don't want to do that until you have to, but then when you have to,
well, yeah, I mean, it's also interesting because we're not religious. and we're not really raising our kids religious, but my parents are very religious. They're very Jesus. They're, as my mom was saying, like, just I'm ready. I was like, okay, Jesus, like, because we were talking.
That's what she said. Yes, that's what I meant, Jesus.
Yeah, pretty much. And so my kids have been exposed to church and going to church, and whenever we go see my parents, we do that. And so there's a little element of it, and so there's this concept of, is Bob going to heaven, or what's going to happen to him? So there's that element of kind of talking through what we think, and of course that just goes back to sort of awkward conversations that we've had with our kids in the past of, it's what, however you want to kind of portray death and spirituality, etc.
Can I suggest a few movies that might help?
Please do.
The Heavenly Kid with Jason Gedrick, pre-Iron Eagle. It's about like a 50s greaser who dies too early and then comes back. It's really great. It's good stuff.
Is it with Jason Priestley?
No, it's Jason Gedrick, although he has a similar look as Jason Priestley would later make popular. There's also Coco, actually a fabulous Pixar movie about death and family and legacy and that kind of stuff. Really interesting. And then also Hellraiser. If you've seen Hellraiser, I should sit your kids down. That's Pinhead.
Yeah. Pinhead. He's just basically evil and wants to terrorize you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't open the puzzle box, because that's how you get sucked into whatever the world of Hellraiser is. I don't know if it's actually hell. I don't know. You know what? To be honest, I'm not big into the gore. No. Mom and Barry can't handle the freaking Bly Manor miniseries on Netflix. She's not one for scares, even though she loves. Right now, she's in the other room watching Teen Witch, which is, in my opinion, much scarier than any of the actual scary movies we're watching. But like you said, a lot of people try to stay away from those like my kid, he's watched Poltergeist and he's been fine, right? But then he'll see something else. If he sees real life, something like, instead of like supernatural or monsters, if it's a little bit more real life looking or a real life way to die, that is what freaks him out. So we try to not do that because we don't want to get woken up in the middle of the night. When I was 9 and a half, I saw the movie Lost Boys in the theater. I showed my kid the preview for Lost Boys. He was like, no. He's older than I was at the time, Pete. What's happening to these kids?
You're raising a snowflake. You're raising a snowflake. You got to sit him down, open up his eyelids with those and then Clockwork Orange is followed by, let's see what else. What other Kubrick movie?
But that's a good point, because Clockwork Orange is disturbing in that it depicts heightened but like real world violence. And there's a couple of scenes. There's the rape scene where he's singing in the rain is legit one of the most disturbing sequences that I've ever seen. And a lot of people did say that they try to shield their kids from violent movies, but like some of them, like M. Lavely was like, I try to keep away guns and violence, but then my husband showed him Star Wars. He's 4 years old. I showed my kids Star Wars at 4, and the excuse was they're not guns, they're lasers, right? It's like fake violence. There's no blood. It's like watching A-Team, right? Nobody bleeds, nothing like that. But then you wonder, because people objected to A-Team, if you don't see the consequences of the violence.
Oh my God, how can BA? Dude, first of all, you go into a barn, you're gonna come out with a cabbage thrower, okay? Because if BA and Murdoch are on the scene, they're gonna make a cabbage thrower. And that cabbage thrower is gonna be serious.
I like how every once in a while you'll have like a detailed take on something, but it's all from like in 1985, because then once you got back to the United States, you stopped watching pop culture of any kind.
It just reminded me of that time, that one summer where I just binged the A-Team. Correct.
So Living in a Blonde Moment said that she shields her kids from excessive gore and full-on sex scenes, especially when they're combined, like Hellraiser. And Kelly A. King says she shields her kids from realistic violence and heavy emotional stuff. She says The Avengers is okay, Platoon is not. Yes. And I would say that's pretty good. My eldest kid has seen all the Avengers. Again, there's no real blood in these kinds of things. Obviously, there's no real Thor in real life, so you can be like, this is all make-believe, a little bit easier than if you show them like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is could very well happen to them. right? So you want to shield them from the real stuff, not necessarily. You don't. A lot of people shield them from all of it, but for us, we make a distinction between kind of cartoonish, make-believe violence and stuff that it tries to depict more of a real-world thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, also a lot of it is, I mean, the difference between even the show 24 with Kiefer Sutherland
Yeah.
was he's running around with a severed head in a bag. You know, it's like,
Yeah, I remember
mean,
that.
Avengers, you know, whenever someone dies or whatever, they're falling off a cliff or someone shot him in the
Who
chest.
falls
You know,
off a
it's just
cliff in Avengers?
what?
Who falls off a cliff?
Black
Oh,
Widow.
Black Widow. Damn it.
Come on, man.
Now I
And
think so.
Gamora.
That wasn't a cliff though. It was more like a pit.
By all definition, it's a straight up cliff. There was no other side to that
every definition.
chasm. Yeah. So, but the violence, yeah. I mean, I think that's really. There is a family that we're really close with that we love that has and continues to show their kids like the Saw movies.
Oh
And
my
it's
God.
like, I don't know. We're so far apart on that. Like, I don't know why
I
would
don't
you?
either. Yeah.
What's the upside of
So-
showing your 10, 11, 12-year-old Saw? Like,
Okay, but this is like the parents driving it, like come down and watch Saw with us. This isn't like the kid is into kind of horror and like on his own is like seeking this stuff out.
Well, first of all, it's her. And second of all, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if this is family time horror movie watching.
Like
I don't
that's
know
not
if this is just like, hey, no, honestly, check out this chick. She's crawling around in a pit of needles. It's awesome.
You love this whole needle scene. Is that an actual scene? I've never seen it.
It is, and it's Saw 10. I'm not sure which Saw it is.
You've
and
seen them all.
It's one of the grossest things I've ever seen in my. It was so awful. What is the fucking point? Woman falls into a pit of needles and crawls around on it for literally 10 minutes.
What do you mean? What is the point? You gotta solve Jigsaw's
Yeah, because
puzzle.
how is that moving the story forward? It's just get out of the fucking
movie,
pit,
dude. Oh man, you're like the church lady. Anyway,
just die.
So here's what's worse, or maybe you don't think this is worse. In America, in particular, violence kind of permeates everything, all of our entertainment. But we're very prudish about sex, right? You'll get stronger ratings for stuff that shows nudity and sex than you will for, like the A-Team, and people just getting shot all over the place. A lot of people, because I asked the question like,
first of all, lay off the A-Team.
I said,
there's no bullets. You've never seen anyone actually die in the A-Team. No one actually dies in the A-Team, just to be real.
What I'm saying is I wanted to see Murdoch get it on a couple of times. They wouldn't let the guy get his freak on NBC or whatever it was
Amy and Face, you wanted to see them get it on?
Oh,
and
God,
Amy.
Face was the worst. How come Hannibal Hannibal was always the one who was wearing disguises and masks?
How was Face the worst? He was the best.
No,
so
Face
good
was the
looking.
Worst. What's his name? Benedict? Can't remember his name. He was the
Benedict,
worst.
With,
Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold played Face on A-Team.
I'm a good history student.
Anyway, did you ever see the movie with Bradley Cooper as Face? Anyway, movie's actually a little bit underrated, even though it's like 7 or 8 hours long.
No, first of all, don't they like survive an explosion by landing on an explosion? That's kind of what I remember from A-Team.
Good. It actually sounds good. That sounds like every Simpson.
It's like, oh, we're falling. Wait, there's an explosion that's cushioned our fall. Great.
A softer explosion.
Plausible.
I love it.
And then Bradley Cooper's got his shirt off.
I want to see that. So a couple of people, including M_Phoenix0407, say they tried to shield their kids from the sex stuff, which obviously we do as well, unless it's family sex night when the kids.
Right, of course, with your liberal friends and your
exactly. Well, George Soros spends a lot of money on organizing my family sex night party.
That's actually a good point.
I don't even know what we're talking about. Anyway, so social media,
microfinancing.
Social media and technology were another thing. We had a whole social media episode about the kind of the dangers of your kids being on there and getting chatted to, and exposed to all sorts of stuff. Most of which boils down to, a lot of sex like weirdos on there trying to get nudes and all that kind of thing. And then there's the bullying aspect of it, which I think parents are very protective against as well.
Well, hold on a sec. Well, we're going from sex on TV to social media.
Well, the sex on like social media and on computers. It's
yeah, but transition. I mean, I don't know. It's
a fucking killer segue, bro.
Is it? Because we didn't even talk about sex on TV, and that's the whole reason I showed up. I
said I was disappointed that there isn't enough sex on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's much more violence.
And I'm like, hey kids, gather around. This is what I'm talking about. What I'm doing to your mom.
So you have a 12-year-old daughter, who I imagine watches some melodramatic. If she watches anything like melodramatic stuff that's like based around relationships and girls and kissing and that kind of thing. My 10-year-old boy, anytime he senses a kiss, he like curls up in a ball and won't watch it. He's not interested in that at all. Yeah. So like when I show him 9.5 weeks, he's just like checked out.
Yeah. He's like, just eat the egg already. Just eat it. What are you wasting all this food for?
Exactly.
Favorite shows include shows like Jane the Virgin, which, by the way, is actually an excellent
I've heard
show.
that's good. I haven't seen it.
It's really, really good.
Is the titular Jane actually a virgin?
Yeah. And they get into it, but it's the way it's done is very clever. It's very smart. It's like anyway. And Vampire Diaries is the other one.
That's not even on the air anymore.
Yeah, neither of these shows are on the air. It's all streaming. It's all digital. It's all tubes, man.
Teen and tween girls love them sexy vampires, man. She's not into Twilight yet?
No, but that's probably around the corner, I'm sure.
You should shield your kids from Twilight and also from Mormonism.
Why would I shield my daughter from Taylor?
Have you read it?
Light? No. Well, who's the main actor who is like? What's that guy's name?
Robert Pattinson?
No, not that guy. The other guy. The guy with the big post-orbital ball.
I don't know what his name is. The kid who plays the werewolf? Tyler Lautner.
Tyler Lautner.
I do know what his name is. I hate myself.
He's the best.
You like him? You were team. What was he? Jacob? What was the other name? Team Jacob and Team what?
I don't know, but I love the fact that he's like 35 right now somewhere.
Somewhere. You know where he's not? At your local multiplex.
Did I ever tell you the time that my wife and I had what I consider my greatest argument win was when she goes, "Oh, I just watched this movie that came out last year with the kid from Sixth Sense." And I go, "You mean Haley Joel Osment?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, so is he playing the dad?"
You brought this up on the last podcast episode.
I know. I'm telling you. Look, man, it's the last time it's the first and last time I've ever come close to having just like an out of body experience.
So in case everyone else didn't hear it when you told the story the first time, so your wife was watching a movie that was filmed like last year.
Yes.
And thought Haley Joel Osment was still 9 years old.
Kid. and the argument went, or not even the argument, it was a conversation, and it went on for like 40 minutes where it was like, Haley Joel Osment is the dad, and she looked at me like, "No, dude, he's the kid." And I go, when did this movie come out again? And she's like, "Last year." I was like, "That's not possible." And then it basically, after getting completely roasted as to how I could not understand this, I had her look it up. And the sweetest thing ever happened. Just the phone just went upside down on the lap and just silence. Just complete silence. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. After 20 years, that's all I needed.
You don't need you're right, honey. I'm sorry. You don't even want that. You want her to be seen.
That'd be too much. I'd get an overdose. All I needed is just a silent end of the conversation with the phone overturned on the lap.
So I mentioned the sex thing as something you want to shield your kids from. And I said, sex or porn. And a bunch of people yelled at me for being like, of course you shield our kids from porn. But when your kids get older, you're not shielding them from anything.
What kind of porn in your household?
I'm saying if you don't, you need
it's to. What mom and I do to make money.
Yeah, well, George Soros. So what I mean is, and a bunch of people did mention this, that sometimes you need to be open with your kids so that when they are on their own, they understand what they're dealing with and they don't get caught off guard and taken advantage of or whatever. Like, you got to know what to charge, right? Anyway, this sex thing has just been a landmine, and I'm not just talking about my social life. We were talking about social media briefly, and Missy Wolf 921, this is what I was getting at. She said overuse of technology and the unrealistic expectations that come from social media. So not only is the sex that's portrayed online really nothing any of us, you and me in particular, are not going to anywhere near any of that stuff.
I mean, come on.
It's not what you're going to get.
It's disgusting. Second of all, my credit card is maxed out at this point. Does anyone have any?
But then the thing where, like, people look at an Instagram influencer like me and they think, wow, I can be like rich and famous if I hate my kids that much. And no, that's not how it works. This is all fake. This whole background is
actually
a
what's
green
so
screen.
interesting
I don't
about
even have kids.
It's so what's so interesting, Mike, about your persona is how you fly in the face of, well put together, super wealthy, a great sort of environment, family environment, and all we're left with
accounts.
All we're left with is, I don't know. Does anyone have enough money left over from George Soros' sex parties to fund my?
People want to give me money. They're like, wow, they don't want to be like me. They pity me. You know what? Right. Which is what I'm going for. Because pity, it's a powerful emotion, and I'm proud to accept other people's. Especially when I got my beanie on.
Oh God.
With the tuft.
What? God, why not? Why not just not wear? Why not wear a beanie?
The fans demand it.
Okay.
The fans demand it. I'm really hot because it's literally in the 70s, right? So another topic was adult concerns, right? So this is where we're shifting kind of into real world territory instead of kind of what's on the media. So by this, I think a lot of people meant DB7898 says money stuff, COVID, right? So they have a 5-year-old. And obviously you're not going to burden a 5-year-old with like your boss's demands or why you can't pay rent, unless he's a really good listener. And then when it comes to COVID, so my 4-year-old says to me yesterday, he's like, hey, Daddy, when it's not COVID, can we go to the place where you like throw the ball down and knock things over? I'm like, yeah, bowling. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, when it's not COVID, can we go there? I'm like, no, like taking a bowling sucks. But
yeah, exactly. The best part about what's going to happen for the next probably 6 to 7 years is just COVID will continually exist as something that happens.
Exactly.
In
your
household.
It's like
I literally heard the news today. I saw that COVID has been cured. It's 2024, and I feel like we really probably could go bowling.
Nope.
No, really?
It's not safe.
Okay.
It's not safe. It's like
what if we just go outside for a walk around the block?
No.
Oh.
Your mom, though, is immune. She can take you.
Oh.
She doesn't have to worry about it. But me, I'm very high risk. And just Allie said financial situations, right? So, my kid is 10, and my other kid, like I said, is like 4.5. And there are times where it's clear neither of them really have much concept of money, which is
right.
When shielding goes too far, right? I should be teaching my 10-year-old a little bit more about how this stuff works. But my 4.5-year-old, still doesn't totally get numbers, right? So he has no idea what stuff costs. But I think this is the fine line, again, where you want to give your kids some kind of basis in reality, but you don't want to burden them with your stress or anything like that.
No, but it is a time where you want to lock that 4-year-old into some kind of hourly rate.
Yes.
Some sort of binding hourly rate that they can't quite get out of when they're 16 and be like, hey, you signed it. It's exactly, you said that binding. 4 pennies was the most money you'd ever seen. So that's what your hourly rate is. I love my 6-year-old. So we dabble in chores.
I dabble.
There's a lot of mixed messages. I gotta sit down with my wife and talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't. Page. Yeah, we're not on the same page. I was offering my kids all sorts of money for doing chores that are above and beyond. So like making your bed, that's you're not getting money.
That's table stakes, yeah.
Table stakes. Any kind of like laundry folding, garbage taking out, making other people's beds, any other kind of cleaning up of the other bathroom, other rooms or something. That all of that is on the. We're in play for money. The best part though with my 6-year-old is he doesn't want any of this stupid paper money. He just wants coin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, son, I've got the smallest coin you've ever seen. He's like, no way. And I'm like, I'll give you 2 of these if you fold that whole pile, like the whole pile of laundry. Anyway, it was hard to distinguish the pile of laundry from the folded laundry, but it doesn't matter. It was
doesn't matter. He was out of your hair.
I paid for what I got.
Exactly.
But I got what I paid for.
It is as your kids get older, and I think a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is dependent on the kid's age and changes, and you become a little bit more lax, and also it becomes necessary to teach them this kind of stuff. Like I said, with my 10-year-old, we need to start teaching him for real a nice solid grasp of money. Hopefully, teach him a little bit about oil futures and how that works to see if we can start, maybe, drum up an algorithm.
There is no future.
Yeah, exactly.
All renewables. Crypto. Get him into the crypto market early, man. Seriously.
Well, you know what? I get a lot of people soliciting me on that on Instagram, putting in my comments, this guy saved my life with his Bitcoin mastery and that stuff. And every once in a while, somebody will be like, this person saved my relationship with his love spells.
Damn.
Yeah. I haven't tried any of the love spells yet. But I may need to because Mama Bear hates the beanie too. So I may need to do a little something. So speaking of Bitcoin, a lot of people were trying to keep their kids safe from the real world news and politics. Another brilliant segue.
What a seamless transition.
Obviously, right now, with less than 2 weeks or exactly 2 weeks to go to the election, is that right?
Sounds right.
That kind of stuff is in the air all over the news. My oldest kid knows who Trump is.
But why do we want to keep?
It depends.
Yeah.
I think so. The way I phrased it was more like how the really toxic political talk, right? Not necessarily, what's going on in the real world, that there's an election happening, but the way some of the, like Trump talks about people and other people talk about people. If anything, he's an example of how not to behave. But there are just some topics and some of the discourse that comes up isn't necessarily something a lot of people want their kids to get exposed to, because a lot of it is kind of very hate-filled and angry. And people do not talk, not just Trump, like people don't talk about each other very nicely. Very divisive times.
Did your 10-year-old watch the debates or any of the debates?
No. I mean, there was a 10-year-old in the debates.
Yes.
No, he was in bed by then. It didn't start till like 9, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad he
my
didn't see that.
My 12-year-old, this was her first debate, and it was good. She saw both. She saw the presidential and the vice
presidential. What did she think of the presidential debate?
I mean, I had to remove myself
because it was infuriating. Yeah,
it was, for me, it was infuriating, so I removed myself. But the vice presidential I thought was really interesting because, there was a couple times where Pence, had made, both of them were making, at least they were both civil, and some of them had made a couple points that were actually pretty valid, and everybody was making
he spoke over
salient points, and one of I was like, oh, that's a really good point, and my 12-year-old's like, wait, but Dad, that's not who you're rooting for, and I was like, I know, but that's still a good point. And I think that was a really interesting little moment.
Well, that's interesting because that is kind of the biggest challenge we have right now, is people are so entrenched and tunnel vision about who's right and who's wrong. They can't even acknowledge that kind of thing. Exactly. Audra Lovejoy, listen to this. She says, we shield the kid from politics in our house. My husband and I are on different sides of the ticket, so we can get heated and complicated here if we talk too much. I don't know how.
I don't know
how you still have a marriage. I don't know how. Like, kudos to you.
Yeah.
I don't understand how
There's a
they're
huge iron
so.
fence that goes out.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, more power to you, Audra Lovejoy, and your husband. That is a tough situation in this day and age. I mean, look, it hasn't been the past 20 years, 25 years, pretty much ever since like Fox News came around, it's been getting more and more divisive, and it's obviously at something of a fever pitch right now. I don't know how you deal with it. I deal with a lot of these people online, people who don't agree with me, but do agree with QAnon, right? And it's impossible to talk to those kinds of people. And I don't know how you would do it if you lived in that. I can't imagine if they remade Family Ties, the show we talked about in the past, and it was like, it was like Obama era liberals, but their kid was a QAnon MAGA guy. Oh my God! How haven't they made this show?
Oh my
How have they
God!
made
Why
this show?
have
It would be amazing.
this, Mike? This is comedy gold.
I just crushed it. I'm
it.
gonna call. I'm gonna call my contact at HBO. I think he works in the mailroom.
It is
The one
interesting
guy I
how
know there.
I think you nailed it. Like this day and age, it is very strange how you could be. I mean, again, just in this point in time, specific point in time in history, there were plenty of other times in history. To your point, 20 years ago,
Obviously, Civil
where,
War.
where you could no, but like I mean, you could even be. I mean, even remember the Bush Gore, where it was like, I don't really.
Oh yeah,
whatever.
that's what I'm saying.
It's like, who really cares?
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh right, that's why we care.
Right.
But yeah, like you could be like, okay, fine. But nowadays it's
But you know
it's
what?
hard.
Maybe Audra and her husband, maybe maybe that's a positive example, right? Where they can kind of coexist and keep their marriage intact. I don't know how they're doing it. Audra, hit us up, give us some tips, especially my wife. She sees this beanie. Again, it's going to be like Biden, Trump all over again. Ruby_Loblo says, we avoid politics and the horrors of the real world too. I can't say that. Real world too with who was in the second one. But we answer questions if we're asked, right? And I think that is one of the most important points that was raised on this. If your kid asks you about something, you can't like pretend it doesn't exist or whatever. Depending on how old the
that's
kid
not
is.
true. That's not true. You're just parenting wrong.
Decent point. But depending on how old the kid is, if they're curious about something and you think they can handle it, talking to them about it can be great. They talk about these things called teachable moments. And like you did with your daughter, you had one watching the debates the other night.
Yeah.
And those are valuable moments with parents and children.
And she actually, there was a moment there where she was like, Dad, stop drinking so much. And I was like, no, you stop drinking so much. You stop drinking so much. And
so
that was a really valuable lesson that she learned, not talk to me.
Ribs74 said that they're shielding their kids from rioting and that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know how old the kids are, but I feel like the riots and the protests for sure are kind of another teachable moment about, why people protest, the history of that stuff in our country, what's important. And rioting is kind of like, this is the wrong way to do that.
Yeah.
Also, Antifa is an ideology. It's not an organized group. And Black Lives Matter is not violent. And they're not trying to destroy towns and cities the way the Republicans are saying. That's what I say to my son when he asks. Right. This is the stuff he needs to know, the truth. And we're touching on it now. And then the next big thing is a little bit more philosophical, but about like not exposing your kids to hate and intolerance, which I think these days it's hard to talk about politics and, the state of the world or the state of this country without getting into some of that stuff, right? A large part of the conversation, even during the debate, was, denouncing white supremacy or not and that kind of thing. And then you have to explain what that is. And I think one of the cool things about kids today, kids who live in Brooklyn and kids who are a little bit younger, they're not, that stuff confuses them a little bit sometimes, right? Like it's a pleasant surprise when they're like, why would you have to explain what racism is or whatever. And like, why would you hate somebody for that reason? You're like, You're right. That's a beautiful message to take away. But also the tenor that Trump has brought to the atmosphere seeps out and everybody kind of uses it. And everywhere you go, the kind of discourse has been lowered just by the way the president speaks and other things happen. And then if you bring that into your house, that can kind of seep into your house too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how. I mean, this last 4 years will be probably looked back on as some of the darkest, definitely within the U.S. history that we've had. But I think what's interesting about it is it's also, so we've had Me Too movement, we've had BLM, and we have this huge, I get polarization for sure, but what's to me what's interesting is that for a lot of it is, we're having to really deal with these problems head on in a way that
Yes.
we haven't been able to or have ever dealt with them in
Didn't
any
want
sort of way. Didn't want to.
to. Yeah.
Our parents, us growing up, maybe, who knows? Like, but now it's like, look, this is it, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is it. This is what we have to address. Um, and we didn't want to address it,
No.
but it's being addressed now. And I think ultimately, um, to be honest with you, there is a ton of positivity that's coming out of this, which is a very bizarre thing to say, because 2020 has been, I mean, this is the year of
It's
the
been a
murder
shit
hornet,
fire, yeah.
which literally has no benefit to anybody. The murder hornet, just to like come back to that really
That
quickly.
disappeared.
No, it
Where'd that
didn't.
go?
It's still around. They're breeding and they're getting stronger. And we need to turn our attention from the stupid election back to murder hornets.
Well,
Okay?
on
Let's
November
focus
4th,
on the real danger.
maybe we will.
Um, but I do think that I look, we need to, and we are in the process of reassessing how we engage with each other, uh, in a global sense, in a local sense, in a societal sense, economic, etc. And I don't think anybody has the answers, but we're definitely having to go through it right now,
Well, we're
and we'll
being
see how it
pushed
goes.
to the brink, right? So the hope is that we've hit bottom and hopefully we'll start bouncing back. I will say that we're going to get a lot more 1-star ratings after this episode. The ones that I've gotten have been people who don't like my political views, which should shock no one. And we haven't even done our all politics 500th episode yet. Which
Oh
is
my
really,
God, that's so
yeah.
amazing. Where we finally
Let people
endorse
know,
the
yeah.
candidate.
Exactly. Who are we going to vote for? So we talked briefly about Audra Lovejoy's situation at home, and one of the big topics that came up dovetails nicely with the hate and intolerance that parents try to shield from their kids, is toxic family members, and a lot
Oh,
of the
okay.
toxicity revolves around political stances. So let's see. So Mariah Summer says she loves her Catholic in-laws, but not their views on gay marriage and women and etc.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's tough. Like, you got to maybe try to keep those conversations from happening when your kids are around. Obviously, Thanksgiving is potentially a tougher time to
Yeah.
do that. It's kind of the proverbial family clash holiday. Is that right?
Right. That is. Yep. That's correct.
And then, there are a lot of people where they explained that, whether their parents are from an older generation or they have different political views, or purely just maybe they're just like, I don't know, like, so Ash at the beach said she tries to avoid her mom's negativity and self-destructive behavior and language. Like, that's the kind of influence you don't necessarily want around your impressionable kids, right?
Okay. You're right.
Not all
And
political based.
no, you're right. And I think I said this maybe a couple episodes ago. I can't remember, but I found myself actually taking a step back and being like, I can't watch any more of this. The opposite of the Fox, like
Yeah.
Trump embarrassed himself yet
Yeah.
again, or like
Well, it works on both sides.
how annoying is it, just like I just stop that the whole element of it, because it's one of it's just placating me, like it's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Well, you're
just
in your
being
bubble, right? Yeah.
it's simply pandering to me, and I'm like, that's just stupid. It's not moving the conversation forward.
Confirmation bias, right? Like,
Yeah.
whoever they say what you want to hear, and you're like,
No,
all right.
really, yeah, and I, and I, because I'm not on social media, I don't
Sure.
have that much of an echo chamber, but I do use YouTube a lot, and so there is that algorithm aspect of you watch. I mean, sometimes, and we all know this, like you click on this one video, you're like, I don't want to click on it, but I
Yeah.
really just
Oh
want to
my God,
see
I know.
how the world's biggest umbrella, because I don't want a lot of umbrella videos, but I want to see the world's largest umbrella and how it was made.
And
I'm sorry.
next thing
It's
you know,
just
you
nothing
believe
but
it's just
umbrella
that.
videos. Yeah. But just in terms of the intolerance, I- you know, uh, I think it's important just to talk to just to make sure that your kid is not overly one way or the other, and I don't know
Yeah,
how else
just
to
keep
say
an
it
open
other
mind,
than
objectivity, but keep them
yeah.
off social media. That's a large part of it, right? Like that's where the
It, it
bubbles
it
are.
is, that's a real thing. I mean, social media is such a it's
The bug.
have you seen The Social Dilemma?
Yeah. Did
So
you?
Mike, that's what I was talking about, except I was in 2007 when I said
Well,
it by
back then,
myself
but I
in a
mean, look, man,
corporate boardroom.
a lot of positive things have come out of it. It wasn't really until the last 8 years that things really started to get horrible, and that's only what, three
eight
quarters
years
of its
ago.
existence.
Um,
It's
yeah,
not the technology; it's what we choose to do
no,
with it.
it is the technology,
Well, it's a
absolutely.
combination of things. If there were guidelines and there were restrictions, and the world wasn't hell bent on, profiting their way to extinction,
Monetizing
it might be a little
engagement.
different. Yeah, monetizing everything. Anyway, Sierra Roxanne says she tries to shield her kids from all of the above, all the things we've mentioned. J.P. Johns said, just sex. My kids are 4 and 5. All the other stuff is fair game.
It's just sex, okay, 4 and 5 year olds. That's all it is. I'm just a
No,
man and I
he's
have
saying he
needs.
shields his
So
kids,
back off.
or he or she shields their kids from just sex, none of the
They.
other stuff, because they're 4 and 5, and all the other stuff is fair game. Which, more power to them. Miss SECSC says nothing anymore. She's 12. So J.P. Johns is like 4 and 5 is enough of an age to, let them run free. Miss SECSC says 12 is the age, and Jen Ben 801 says my kid is 4. So we shield a lot of what you said, but we answer the questions that he has, and I think that's the middle ground to embrace. Right? You don't necessarily expose your kids to stuff that you think they're too young for, but they're going to see some of it, and when they do, make a good faith effort to engage them and explain to them some of it, depending on what the topic is and how old they are.
I think you take a leaf out of Captain Fantastic, the movie. You take a
Oh
leaf
my
out of
God.
that book where
This is the fifth
immediately,
movie you like.
yeah, that's it. Outside of what was it?
I Am
Legend. I Am
Legend.
Legend.
There was
Yeah.
some really random one too, and I can't remember. I wish I could.
Gleaning the Cube.
Gleaming with an M.
Was it?
Yes,
Gleaming. Oh
gleaming.
yeah.
It's a skating term.
Gleaming
Yeah.
makes more sense.
So Captain
Um,
Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen.
yeah, where he just the kid asks a question about sex and the kid's 4 years old and the Viggo Mortensen just delivers the most straightforward, detailed description of what sex is.
You
It's
finally
amazing.
learned what it
I
was after
finally,
years
I
of being
honestly,
wrong.
tears just streaming down, and I looked over at my wife. I go, "That's what you meant this whole time?" And she's like, "You son of
Son of
a
a
bitch."
bitch. I haven't seen the film, but a lot of people do adhere to that. Like, no holds barred. J.P. Johns apparently, like, tell them everything they need to know. Don't shield stuff from them. You don't want to stigmatize anything. Certainly, you don't want to stigmatize sex, which can be a beautiful thing. You just want to make sure the kids make the right decisions around it.
Can
Come
it
on.
though? Can it
Yeah,
be
well,
though?
I haven't seen Captain Fantastic, so
Okay.
maybe I've been doing it
Okay.
wrong.
All right. That's yeah.
Kristen Conley says that there are things I don't want my kids to see, but we talk about everything. They are going to encounter it all sooner or later, and we need to prepare them or prepare them for it, or the world will tell them what to think, right? And I think when you say the world these days, social media is largely it, right? Your kids are going to get exposed to that. That's how they're going to find out their stuff. So if you're not open with them and explaining things to them, and their source is Twitter, or your YouTube channel about
You're
the umbrella.
adorable that you think that the kids are anywhere near Twitter. You
TikTok
know what Twitter is largely made up of? Is like
bots.
45-year-old men just tweeting back at each other and then screen capping it, and then posting it on Instagram.
Me and you, buddy. Except not you, just me.
Yep, there you go. That's
But whatever. Social media itself is a very skewed.
TikTok. They're on TikTok. I did ask my 12-year-old where she got her news from, and she did say it was TikTok.
How do you get
And
news on TikTok
well,
unless it's the latest
no,
dance
you
move?
don't. The answer is you don't.
Right.
And
Good for her.
maybe you do. I don't know.
Maybe you should get on TikTok so you know what your kids are getting themselves into. How about
You know
that?
what? I know how to do the whoa, so maybe I will, Mike. Maybe I will.
That's another.
Yeah, you don't even know what the
You're right.
row
I
is.
don't know, and I'm going skating right by it. But I had another idea for the revival of an 80s TV show. We just did Family Ties, and we updated it for the modern era.
Uh-huh.
And now we can do 21 Jump Street, except instead of the kids going undercover in high school, they go undercover on fucking TikTok. Fucking Johnny Depp, Michael DeLuise.
Let's just put it this way. It's not the most seamless
Holly Robinson
transition.
Pete would all show up for cameos. She would sing the theme song again. Probably the best TV show theme song ever.
Sing the
Jump
theme tune. Right, the
down
theme
on
tune.
Jump Street.
Anytime you say sing the theme tune, I think of Little Britain.
Well,
I can
go
sing
back there.
the theme
That's
tune.
where the guy dresses up in drag all the time.
No, it's when but it's when
Sketch show, yeah.
he does
Never seen it.
you know, the little actor. He's like this big, and everything's really big next to him. It's really funny.
This is very offensive stuff. We're gonna
Is
get
it?
a lot of 1-star ratings on Apple
Is
for our
it?
political takes, and you know,
Am I Little Britain reference?
it was cringe-tastic.
I
What
can
was it you
write
said?
the
God
theme
damn it!
tune. I can sing the theme tune.
Stop
great.
doing accents. That's not what people come here for. People tune in for my beanie and my movie takes.
Oh,
Tonight you
I'm
came hot
sorry.
with movie takes. You brought up Captain Fantastic.
And Gleaming the Cube.
We didn't talk about Gleaming the Cube. You just got the title wrong, so that you don't get points for that.
I got a couple points.
I'm
looking at you, Dana Bosday.
Would you show your kids Gleaming the Cube tomorrow, or would you shield them?
First of all, I don't have $1.99 just lying around. I'm about
You
to
gave all your
shell out
coins to your
that kind of
6-year-old.
coin. Give me a break. They can fucking watch it on their own.
I am shielding my children from Christian Slater. Nothing good can come from
Mr.
encountering
Robot.
him too early. Don't
Mr.
spoil anything.
What are you talking about? He's in Mr. Robot.
People don't need to know that.
What do you mean?
You're so confused.
He's like in the second episode.
I know. I'm joking. No one watches Mr. Robot anymore. It's 2020. Mr. Robot?
Is it?
It is.
Mr. Robot.
So we just totally crushed this topic. I had some killer segues. We had some hot political takes. We talked about the sex parties Mama Barry and I have at the behest, not just the funding of, the behest of Mr. George Soros. Yes. He really encourages us.
Microfinancer.
He tells us we'd better do it, or he's
like,
not going to.
Yeah. He's like, listen, you're in Brooklyn. You're obviously liberal.
We're part of Antifa.
So just do this. And, just send me the whatever. How do you send it? Mic tape? You send me, send me the receipts. Send me the receipts. Why would you need this many Rice Krispies? It just doesn't make any sense.
I had to keep renting Captain Fantastic to know what I was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of fall family fun,
yes, previous episode. Previous episode.
Not George Soros funded. Last episode, we talked about, Mama Barry and I talked about fall family fun. The best part about it is in that episode, we talked about how we had just gone apple picking. And then after we recorded the episode and after it aired, we went pumpkin picking. It took another 2-hour drive, separate from the apple picking drive, to get pumpkins. And guess what? We got there and there were apples at this place too. We could have just knocked it all out.
Of course there are. You're in New York State, for God's sakes. They have both.
They have everything.
Why do you think they call it the Big Apple? True fact.
That's not why.
It is, absolutely.
No
New York State is the largest producer of apples. You goddamn, it's Big Apple. Big Apple conspiracy.
Anyway, Dana Bosday had a comment. Why don't you tell us what Dana Bosday said?
Here's my favorite comment of the year. So Dana Bosday commented on the previous episode, Fall Family Fun. Apple picking, ? No thanks. Too many bees, too many people, and I can purchase my own apples at a store for way less money. Why do I want to have to try and to get a stick to reach up high in a tree to get an apple? Dana, you have just summarized everything that is absolutely wrong with the industrial apple construct that exists in fall, northeastern United States fall fucking whole thing that happened.
When Mom and Barry and I talked about it, even though she loves doing these things, she said that she doesn't like going to orchards and places like that are like agritainment, where like it's agricultural entertainment. It's like they try to
you know what? Could you just
like
unsubscribe?
It's app
Just
cots.
don't
It's app
no.
cots.
Stop self-high-fiving.
It's
Stop
called
doing
clapping.
it.
Nobody's
No,
ever
it's
referred to
not.
clapping.
It's not. You held your hand up, and then with the other hand, you slapped your other
Like
hand.
Brendan Fraser at the Emmys.
You didn't clap. A
The Golden
clap is when
Globes.
two hands come together like this. You held your one hand stationary, and then you clapped it with the other.
You know what? I'm stunned by just how amazing some of my takes and my comments have been. And I'm just like a rocket ship.
God damn it.
Apcot.
Okay, first of all, I need Dana. First of all, thank you so much for bringing up one critical fact that the
bees.
Apple industry doesn't want you to know about. It's the bees.
Yeah,
God damn.
I know you hate
And
the
guess what?
bees.
They're out there. They don't like you. They're not cute, and they'll sting your goddamn neck like they
Face
did.
off.
You know what? Last time we went apple picking, true story. Last time we went apple picking, there was a kid. He got stung in the neck.
Are you sure it wasn't a tiny little bat? Maybe it was a vampire bee.
No. Here's the thing. Granted, the kid was being a dick at the time, and I
deserved it.
100% deserved to be stung in the neck. But the fact that he was stung in the neck, my kids talk about nightmares. I had to shield them. And my at the time, my 5-year-old was like, "Did he just get stung in the neck?" And I was like, "No, don't be stupid. That's a ridiculous thing to ever have happened. We're in an orchard. Pick your apples. Where's the stick? And pick your apples." And I want to buy $40 worth of apples. Here's a $40 worth of apples, please, that are going to go bad in about 4 days. Can I have $40 worth of apples?
Here's even worse. We have that $40 bag sitting in our kitchen. They didn't go rotten. You know why? My wife made
getting
apple
stronger.
pie.
They're getting stronger.
Apple pie. I don't truck with pie. I don't want your apple pie. I don't want your peach pie. I don't want your rhubarb pie.
A fruit pie guy.
Fruit is not dessert. Nature's candy, my ass. No.
No, your ass is not nature's candy. Believe
you
all
haven't
of
tasted it. You haven't tasted it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to yet another quite awful edition of the Dad and Buried podcast show.
I thought it was wonderful, and it was nice to see you again. Condolences to your wife and your family for your loss. I do want to tell you that the Big Apple was a reference to horse racing in New York City in the 20s. So In Your Face has nothing to do with apples.
I'm not going to take it in my face. I'm going to take it somewhere completely different.
Speaking of things you want to shield your kids from, everything Pete just said. We will catch you next week. You can catch this on Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. Please give us a rating or a review on Apple. Subscribe, tell your friends. Listen on. If you want to see my beanie, go to YouTube. Throw us some cash on Patreon or Anchor, and we will talk to you next week.
I don't know why you would still be watching This Isn't a Marvel movie, no matter how much I look like Paul Rudd, which you can deny it all you want. It's there in the eyes, I think. I'm young looking like him. If you enjoyed the podcast, which you obviously did or you wouldn't be listening still, sign up on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you want to listen to. Comment here on YouTube, subscribe, hit that like button. We want to hear from you. Comments, questions, dirty jokes, money, all the money you can give us. We'd love it all. Catch you next time.